Hello and welcome to our first pandemic video. In this video we'll discuss Chapter 7 Alpha, third declension. There's a different video for the reflexive pronouns. So let's review. First off, what's a declension? As you know, noun endings in Greek change depending on the case, and the changes to these endings fall into three different patterns, which we call declensions. We've already learned the first and the second declensions. The first declension was characterized by lots of A sounds in the endings. These were mostly feminine, which followed one pattern, and some of them were masculine, which followed a slightly altered pattern. The second declension was characterized by a lot of O sounds in the endings, and these were mostly masculine, following one pattern, some neuter, following a slightly altered pattern, and some very few feminine, which followed the same pattern as the masculine. Now we're going to learn the third declension. There is no characteristic theme vowel in the ending. All three genders are represented, and the masculine and feminine will share one pattern, and the neuter will share a slightly altered pattern. So let's learn some third declension endings. We'll start with the masculine-feminine pattern. So the basic pattern for masculine and feminine endings is the nominative singular is going to have a lot of variety, but sometimes will end in S, and then it'll be os, e, a, whatever the nominative is, and then s, on, si, there'll be some variations here, as, and s. So for the following slides, we'll look at what happens when you take certain kinds of stems and add these endings. Now, it turns out that in the first declension, even though we pretend that the alpha is part of the ending, it's actually part of the stem. So when you add a set of endings to a bunch of words with alphas, nothing ever changes, and it all looks the same. Likewise, in the second declension, the true stem ends in O, and so you add a bunch of endings, and all the endings look the same. But in the third declension, the stem ends in lots of different letters, and so when we add the endings I just listed, sometimes there are these small changes depending on the final letter of the stem plus the ending. So today we're going to look at two sets of stem endings. The first is called the velars, which is anything that ends in gamma, chi, or kappa. And we'll see what happens when you add the above endings to stems ending in a velar. And then the second pattern we'll look at is what happens when you have a stem ending in a dental, which is delta, theta, and tau. And then you add the endings listed above. In Chapter 7b, we'll start learning some more groups, and we'll continue to learn more of these third declension groups as we go. So, first let's look at the stems that end in a velar. So, as a reminder, here are your endings, s, os, e, as, and s, on, si, as, s. And the velars means when the stem of the noun ends in a gamma, kappa, or a chi. So the general rule here is when you take the final velar in the stem plus a sigma, you end up with a xi. So let's look at a sample noun like ho fulax. In the third declension, you're going to always want to pay attention to the genitive singular to get the real stem. So the genitive singular is tu fulakos. If you lop off the ending os, you're left with a stem. So here the real stem is fulak, and you can see that the stem ends in the velar kappa. So let's write out our stem, then add our endings, and then see what happens according to our rules. So we mentioned that anytime a velar is followed by a sigma, it's going to change to a xi. So we're going to change fulax to fulax, and fulaxi to fulaxi. Everything else, though, will remain the same. Last thing we want to do is apply our accents. In this particular word, the rule that's going to apply the most is if the ultima is long, then you move the acute accent to the penult. So most of these, the ultima is short, and in only one of them, the ultima is long, which means the accent will move to the penult. Next up, let's look at what happens when the stem of a noun ends in a dental. So there's a reminder of your endings. The dentals are delta, theta, and tau. One of our rules here is that if you have a final dental letter in the stem plus the sigma, then the dental will go away and you'll just be left with the sigma. So our sample noun is going to be hopais. Again, we have to look at the genitive singular to get the real stem. Lop off the ending, you'll see the stem is pied, which ends in the dental delta. And let's write out our stem, add our endings. For this one, the vocative, for this particular noun, the vocative has no ending. And then our plural endings, and then we apply our rule. Anytime you have the final dental plus a sigma, the dental disappears. So we get pais and paisi. And then we have that weird vocative where there is no ending, and then the final dental just disappears. So our vocative is pi. Everything else remains unchanged. And then we apply accent rules, and I confess that my big book of accent rules is in the office, and we are all in lockdown and not allowed to go there. So I don't know the accent rules. I'm following what the book says. Lastly, let's look at the third declension nouns ending in a dental, the neuter paradigm. So our neuter endings are only slightly different from the masculine and feminine. You'll see that there's no ending for the neuter singular, nominative, accusative, and vocative. And then, as you might expect from what we learned in the second declension, the neuter plural, nominative, accusative, and vocative end in alpha. So same rule applies here. When you have a final dental plus a sigma, the dental goes away and you're left with sigma. The other thing that we'll see is that if you have the final consonant of the stem, if the stem ends in a final consonant and there is no ending, then that final consonant also disappears. And I will show you what I mean. So, sample noun onoma, our true stem is onomat. Here's our stem. Here's our endings. Now let's do the dental plus a sigma rule where the dental goes away. That's only in the dative plural, so onomatsi becomes onomasi. And then the other rule is if there is no ending at all, that final consonant of the stem disappears. So that applies in the singular. Get rid of the final consonant, and you get onoma. Now I'll apply some accent rules. The things you need to know here, of course, accents are persistent for nouns, so you look at where it is in the nominative singular. It's onoma. The accusative singular and vocative singular are going to be identical. Then you want to know that the acute can be no earlier in the word than the third to last syllable. Many of these words are 4 syllables long, so it can't stay on the first syllable. The other rule is that if the ultima is long, that acute accent must move to the penult. So the only one that applies to is onomaton. That's the only long ultima. That means the acute is on the penult, onomaton. Everything else you'll notice is 4 syllables long with a short ultima. Therefore, the accent, the acute accent, goes on the antepenult, onomatos, onomati, onomata, etc. That's it for now. Please join me for the next video on the reflexive pronoun. Thank you.